Welcome to the Ratings Eventing Podcast. And listeners, we have got an Eventing Podcast Classics for you today because a few days ago, Tina Cook announced that she was unlikely to compete at the highest level. I say unlikely because she didn't totally write herself out of contention in the future. But Billy the Red unfortunately passed away. He was her top horse, on whom that she had competed on championship teams, and so she is left without a horse at the very top level and is going to concentrate on the career of her daughter Izzy, who has had an exceptional season in juniors, and also her son, who is a very talented rugby player. Tina will still very much be part of the eventing community and still going to compete up to the 3-star level, and hopefully we should actually get the opportunity to enjoy more of her dulcet tones as part of commentary teams, and more of an analyst role as well. But what I'm trying to get at is to say, in order to celebrate her incredible career, we thought we'd throw it back to a show that we did, which was released actually on the 5th of February 2021. And it was actually a Connolly's Red Mill special. And it is a When Nicole Met show. And it is When Nicole Met Tina. And it is looking back on some of the highlights of her career, looking back on some of those incredible horses, some memories. She was part of a real golden era for Team GB. And we thought this was the perfect opportunity. So here it is, When Nicole Met Tina. It is a Connolly's Red Mill special from February 2021. And from the entire team here at the Ratings Eventing Podcast, Tina, very, very happy semi-retirement, if we can call it that. We are lucky to have been able to enjoy being part of an extraordinary career. Welcome to the Ratings Eventing Podcast, and it is a Red Mill special, the first Red Mill special of 2021, and we are kicking things off with a bang, listeners, because we have got a former European champion. She is an Olympic medalist. She is a stalwart of the British team. I'm really looking forward to this. Welcome to the show, Tina Cook.
Thank you very much. That all sounds very grand introduction.
I do love a good intro. Look, we're really looking forward to kind of looking back at a few of the highlights of your career, of which there have been many. So I have no doubt we're not going to be able to cover them all. But let's go back to the beginning. Talk about your childhood, because you were born into a really horsey family. Was it always something that you sort of felt destined for from a young age?
Yes, I think so. You know, I look back and, you know, I was brought up with racehorses always there. You know, Dad was champion jockey, Mum, international show jumper. She gave up her career when she married Dad to support him. They were starting up training, and then I appeared and my brother appeared on the scene quite quickly. And so I don't remember Mum competing at all, other than to produce a few young horses when I was very young to fund my school fees, which in hindsight was possibly a bit of a waste of time. But, you know, we had a pony each. My brother wasn't that interested. And I remember I've seen pictures of me being very hands-on at the age of, you know, 3 or 4, brushing the ponies, picking out their feet, doing the whole shebang. And so, you know, Mum and Dad were always working. Work was at home. And so Mum and Dad were always busy, and I always enjoyed going up and playing ponies in the state. You know, we had a couple of wooden boxes just on the edge of the garden, and that was my play area, really. And, you know, I entertained myself, and that's where I wanted to be. And so I suppose, yes, that was a natural place for me. As I said, you know, Mum and Dad always working. I always remember when Dad being a trainer, owners used to ring him in the evening. We didn't have mobile phones in those days. And Dad used to have to take the phone off the hook just to be able to eat his supper. And we used to sit down as a family. And, you know, it was a pretty full-on lifestyle. But now that I've got children myself and got one child that loves horses and one that doesn't, and I suppose that was very similar to my brother and I. So, yes, I suppose I was destined to go down the horse route.
How did the eventing come about? Because obviously growing up around the racehorses, the young horses, your mum's show jumping influence, but how did eventing catch your eye?
Well, from Dad, you know, with the racing in those days, it was very much a sort of male orientated sort of sport. You know, it wasn't something that girls were encouraged to do at all. And also I grew tall enough and heavy enough. So thank goodness it wasn't a direction that particularly interested me. I at one point in my teens, I sort of thought I wouldn't mind dabbling in a bit of pointing, but mum and dad were very much like, you concentrate and concentrate on one sport only. And I totally understand that. So really the racing side of it wasn't an option. Obviously I followed the races, but as far as being a jockey is concerned, and mum, even though she show jumped internationally, she also evented internationally. And again, in those days, you could be at the top and do both. But her heart was really in the eventing. She was second at Burghley one year. She rode at the European Championship. So, you know, she really loved it. But then equally, I suppose she was most well known in the show jumping world, jumping at Hickstead in the Derby and Nations Cup teams. So, you know, she was hugely successful in her own right. I suppose when we did pony club stuff and ponies, I enjoyed the cross country. I enjoyed a bit of hunting, and I did a bit of everything, which I totally appreciate that now. You had fun as a kid doing pony stuff. And my brother was half interested. He's a year younger than me. He was half interested, but we did, you know, a few punch trials and things like that together. And I suppose, again, the ponies that I had were quite often sort of hunting ponies that maybe when mum and dad were in Ireland and maybe looking at nice horses, maybe a nice pony might get bunged in the deal as well. So they weren't specific ponies to a particular discipline. So they were just really good all-rounders. So, you know, look, I suppose I was drawn more towards the cross country. Maybe I was better at that. I didn't have huge amounts of dressage lessons, but we had fun. We rode bareback. We charged around the fields, acting like lunatics. So I suppose the cross country was something that I enjoyed the most. And so that was how I went.
Yeah, it came naturally as well. So you started eventing, I think, full-time when you were 16. And then the horse that I guess I want to talk about first is Song and Dance Man, who took you from a team gold at the juniors in 1987 to your first badminton, but then your first senior appearance, senior, I can't even get my words out, your first senior appearance in 1993, not only your first senior appearance, but one with an individual silver medal as well. Tell us about him, because that is the dream, to go all the way through the levels on that sort of first horse, giving you that leg up and making such an impact.
Yeah, I mean, God, when you say it now, it just puts the hairs on the back of my neck, really. He was also my first horse as well, off ponies, and mum was obviously had an amazing eye for a horse. She wasn't spoiled when she was younger, so, you know, she had to make do and with the horses that her parents had found and got as well. So the same with me. She found Song and Dance Man in a local dealing yard. He was a little 16-hand thoroughbred. Mum did a couple of novice events with him. I've done a few hunter trials. I was 14 going 15. I suppose I was quite tall, so I had a horse when I was at that age. And, you know, he was not very good at dressage. In fact, it was absolute disaster, really. He was a bit of a hothead. He was a typical thoroughbred horse, but was absolutely brilliant cross country, and he was fast. And so I did a few pony club things with him, not particularly successfully because of the dressage. And then when I went affiliated and did the BE stuff, that was when I was 15. And to be honest, in those days, we did a couple of novices, and then we did some intermediates for juniors, because the level was upper level than what the juniors and young riders do now. So, I mean, how we all survived and got out the other end. I mean, I think about my fourth or fifth event was an intermediate. I mean, now you just shut your eyes and just can't even imagine it. And, you know, my first taste of getting into a championship was when I was 15, just going 16. I struggled at school. I wasn't the wasn't the brightest. I had great fun at school. I was sort of sporty, and I suppose I enjoyed my running and did well there, but academically not really. And because I had this taste of going to a European Championship, I think I got in as a reserve. That seems to have followed me all the way through my career. But you can't say that I don't seize the moment if I do manage to get in.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I got on the team there, and we won team gold. I was on the team with William Fox-Pitt, as well as many others, obviously. But I say William because we carried on going. Amanda Harwood in those days, Amanda Perrott, and we went all the way down to Rome. And so what an amazing trip. Our mothers all drove the lorries down there. We flew because I don't think our mothers wanted us in the lorries with them for 3 days. And, you know, that was my first European Championship, and to come away with team gold. And I thought, oh my God, this is the way that I want to go. This is such a privilege to represent your country, to have a Union Jack on your saddlecloth, a Union Jack on your coat, to win and come away with a medal, even though I suppose individually I can't even remember where I finished. But anyway, I went clear cross country and show jumping. But yeah, just to be in that whole atmosphere and the camaraderie of a team, it stayed with me forever. You know, I'm getting all passionate about it, talking about it now, and it does mean it a huge amount in it, and it doesn't leave you. And then to have a horse like that to then take me through the grades and get to my first badminton. I did young riders with him, and to do my first badminton, and to move up from probably about 80th off the dressage or something, and I finished 11th.
10th.
Because 10th. Oh God,
even better. Even better.
I know. I don't even know what I was after. Well, you've got all the details in front of you. I can't remember. But anyway, basically nearly last. It was the wettest badminton as well. I mean, really hideous. But I suppose I had a horse that was brave and could gallop, and I naively kicked on, and it just gave me one of those great starts to my career. And, you know, he was just an ordinary little horse, but he had that will to please. I had many years of being incredibly frustrated because he used to get very tense in the dressage, and obviously I had teammates on horses that maybe were a bit more established on the flat and did better than me, and I did get a bit of a mental block about it and used to get quite upset about it, and you know, would practice but never really got anywhere, never really knew how to ride a dressage test until I got my next horse called Smithtown Lad, who was just a hunter hireling that mum and dad again saw him in Ireland and said, look, that's a nice little horse, put that on the lorry. He had a hogged mane, and he was a better mover, even though he'd never done dressage. But I managed to teach him, and with lessons I learned how to ride a dressage test on him, and he sort of ended up being my sort of young rider horse. So when I was going through the grades, I had Song and Dance and Smithtown Lad, and they taught me so much through those junior and young rider days. And Jill Watson was an absolute legend, and you know, she taught us so much about teams and camaraderie and respect. And you know, I was so lucky. Look, it didn't always go amazingly, but I had a lot of fantastic life experiences at an early age. So I think you either take it on board and drives you to do better. I did win an individual medal at a junior European Championships, but I was generally a sort of team person, I suppose, and I suppose I always have been.
You have, and actually the team, I find it so interesting to talk to you about this. I think we spoke about it a little bit on the Horse Trials Support Group show that you came on beginning of last year. Listeners, if you haven't heard it, go back and give it a listen, because it is something that you've already touched upon, is the feeling of riding for your country, that Union Jack, and being part of a team, riding for your teammates. It isn't an individual performance, it is a team. And actually that is something that really means something to you, and it has stuck with you from those early days all the way through to now.
Yeah, very much so, because, you know, in my long career, I have been incredibly lucky to have produced a lot of horses, because that's always my goal with my horses is to see how far I can get them. You know, they haven't been expensive, well produced horses, but they've been horses that I have grown a great relationship with, and it's always been my goal to try and produce them to be team horses. And that's not always been blatantly obvious when they're youngsters, but sometimes that belief you have in each other can produce that, which I think we're so lucky in eventing. Maybe that doesn't apply in dressage and show jumping. You know, maybe they do have to be outstanding athletes, but in the eventing world, a partnership can take you a very long way. And they don't have to be the most scopiest and the most beautiful of horses, but if you can work together, the horses will try their absolute best for you, because as riders we never get it right all the time. You know, as much as we dream about doing it and we look at other people and go, oh god, it must be so frustrating always being, you know, being that perfect. But we're not perfect. And if you've got a partner in a horse that will try for you when you do make a mistake, that's what get the results. And you know, it's something that has stayed with me all along, and that what I thrive on is getting the very best. And if it means you represent your country on this horse that you have produced from scratch and grown this amazing partnership with, and owners that come along with you, you know, owners that have supported me over the years, I mean many years, and with these horses, and that have followed me through ups and downs. You know, it hasn't always been glamorous, but has stuck with me. And you know, hopefully I have rewarded them with a lot of fun as much as they have supporting me. And so that it's a two-way thing, that, you know, you feel very much like a sort of extended family, but equally they're your owners and you respect them and you want them to have fun, because that's why they stick with you.
Yeah, that's why they're doing it in the first place. In the 90s, there was a huge amount of success, obviously, from those first Europeans in 93. But you went on the following year, won a team gold at the World Equestrian Games in 94, then 2 European Championships as well, an individual bronze at the Europeans in 97 with General Jock, and the other horse that springs to mind in that sort of era a little bit later, perhaps Captain Christie. How did they compare? Because obviously now you've sort of made it to senior championship level with your first horse, but actually then establishing yourself at that top level. How was that for you?
Yes, I mean, that was, I was lucky, you know, having that immediate success. But I had I found, well, my mother should take huge amounts of credit. We found young horses like General Jock came from Doncaster Bloodstock Sales. Mum just saw him walking around the paddock. Obviously that's as far as you see, not like nowadays where you can jump and do whatever you like, them have them all x-rayed and vetted and all that carry on. You know, mum and dad, if they, you know, through their work and their business finding racehorses, if mum happened to see, you know, like Jock, he was quite a deep body, deep girth sort of horse, he wouldn't have walked around the paddock at the sales ring looking necessarily like he was a galloper and to be a racehorse. And, you know, mum bought him from there and thought, well, let's see what we can make of him as a 4-year-old. Unbroken, Midnight Blue is another horse. We bought him from Malvern Sales. You know, big Ranger Chestnut, I think he was 3 or 4-year-old as well. And so those two horses sort of came through as Smith Town Lad and Song of Dance Man we were just coming out of Young Riders. We managed to buy General Jock and Midnight Blue over those sort of years and broke them in, got them going. And I needed to find sponsors. So I had a couple of companies that supported me, and a chap called Maurice Pinto who did have horses with my father that actually bred Miners Frolic. And so he ended up being a great supporter of mine by sending me Miners Frolic as a 4-year-old to see what I could do with. And so all the way through my career, they've been young horses, and then I've been able to either sell them, shares of them, to owners that were already with me, or owners that have either sent me horses that maybe haven't been quite good enough, and then have invested in these horses that my mother and I, or my mothers, have found at the sales and bought cheaply. So, we've gone on and produced them. And so, the overlap came I was so incredibly lucky at the World Championships at The Hague. I was actually selected because General Jock had shone at Bramham, and I'd won the young riders at Bramham the previous year, and then General Jock actually won the seniors at Bramham the next year. And as a young horse, I think he was only an 8-year-old. And I was then picked to go to the Worlds on Song and Dance Man and General Jock. So it was, and so I had the choice. I even travelled both horses travel out there. Once I've walked the cross country, there was a particular combination of fences running down this steep hill to this very long bounce into the water. And Song and Dancer was only little; he didn't particularly like jump into water, and so I decided to ride General Jock there. And that, and we got Team Gold. We were the Golden Girls, Charlotte Babe, who's Daisy Babe's now eventing, Mary, obviously Emily King, and Karen Dixon and her daughter's eventing. I was only looking at the picture the other day, and I thought, wow, they were a little bit older than me. I was the new kid there, and it was just so special and such, huge pressure to excel, but just gave me more hunger to be better and to make the most of it. And again, going back to General Jock, he took me through several championships. He wasn't the most careful show jumping, but he gave me some great rides around Badminton, and championships as well. So it was really having the young horses coming through when the other ones, the older ones, maybe had been at the top level for a bit. And it didn't mean that I had huge amounts of horses. I probably only had sort of 6 or 7 horses eventing. I had some owners to support me and sponsors, but it was making sure that there was the next one coming through the levels, and in the hope to take the place of the older ones. And for some, God only knows how, we managed to achieve that.
If we just fast forward a little bit, so obviously there was a good deal of success throughout the 1990s, but the one sort of prestigious event that had eluded you to up until 2008 was an Olympic Games when you went to Beijing. Did that feel at any point, was it a little bit like, is this going to happen for me? Because obviously you'd been at the top of your game, you'd had multiple medals at Europeans, at Worlds, and the Olympics just hadn't quite happened to that point.
Yes, and it was something, oh my goodness, every athlete in every sport dreams of an Olympic Games, and it just wasn't quite happening for me. And the horses, when we talk about all the success, there were times when the horses would go lame, and Atlanta was, I think it was Atlanta. See, I don't have a very good memory. That's why I haven't written a book yet, because my memory isn't very good. But there was one year at Badminton where I was the best British rider. And in those days, you had to go well at Badminton. Otherwise, forget it. You weren't going to be selected. The selection now is a lot more open-minded. But in those days, if you didn't get there, that was it. And one year at Badminton, I was 6th and 8th at Badminton, on General Jock and Midnight Blue, possibly, actually, I think. And that was an Olympic year. And you're like, surely this is going to be the year. Both my horses were the best British horses, and they both just weren't quite sound, with foot problems as it happened, but just foot problems. We just couldn't get on top of them to get them right. The more we tried to get them right or change the shoeing, blah, 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 I didn't make it. And then the next year I had Captain Christie, who again was a brilliant little jumper by Cavalier. He used to go with his tail swishing, but that was just one of his just little quirks, wasn't because he didn't want to go. He was a good horse, probably not really world class, but a really fun horse. Again, a dealer sent him to me to try and make something of, and I told him to, again, some of my loyal owners that have stuck with me all the way through. And he then was my next top horse, so probably wasn't quite good enough to be an Olympic horse. And it was looking like the Olympics were going to elude me, and it was something that Mum had never ridden at Olympics, and I I had incredibly supportive and parents incredibly successful, but I just wanted that little bit more. It was something that I really dreamed about. And then sort of got married and then had the children. So really not thinking, I thought, you're just going to have to accept. Oh no, in between time, I went to Sydney and was there as reserve. That was one of my many torturous reserves. So I went to Sydney with a horse called the Gangster, who we bought off Peter Charles. And I managed to produce him from nothing to an Olympic horse in 3 years. He was a great big horse. He was 18 hands. Obviously, he knew how to jump, but I had to, teach him to do dressage. And he was generally pretty brave cross country, but I had to fairly rattle him through the levels, through the grades. Anyway, I got selected for Sydney and flew all the way out to Sydney, but I was picked as second reserve behind Ian Stark, who had 2 horses out there. And so I was out there for 6 weeks as reserve and never got a chance to compete. And to be honest, it was really mentally disheartening. It was a struggle, because being a reserve, travelling reserve, is an absolutely hideous position to be in. I know it's better than being not selected, because you have a chance of competing, but you need to be somebody there as supporting your teammates, but equally slightly longing that one of them would twist their ankle walking down the stairs.
Nothing
or the
serious.
Horse gets a nasty cough, because you want their slot. You want a chance to compete. That's why you're there. But equally, you've got to be there smiling, supporting them. It is, honestly, it's the biggest head screw, because and 6 weeks of it was the torturers. I mean,
a long way and a long time.
Yeah. And poor old Rodney had an injury. So then his horse slipped over and he broke his ankle. So I thought it was my chance, but I wasn't given it. Ian Stark was very lucky and had 2 horses to compete in 2 competitions. And I did think that was it. That was my chance. Come on. I really had to keep saying to myself, get over it. It's not going to happen. Push it behind you. I just was so disappointed that I'd gone all that way and I hadn't had the opportunity. But then I had experienced the Olympic Games. I had to try and look at the positives, but I was very down for a long time. Minus Frolic was, again, a young horse, going back to what I was saying earlier, Maurice Pinto, who had bred him and his sister. And he was an owner of my father, and then he trained horses himself, and then he came out of the sport. And so kindly said, right, Tina, I've got a young horse here. I'd like to see, you can have no expenses to me, but you make him into whatever he'll be. And my brother got his half sister.
Okay.
And when I went over in my lorry to go and pick him up, I thought, I don't know what I'm going to get. I might have some scrawny looking thing in the stable. And I looked and I thought, okay, he's beautiful. Surely he'll be a show horse. He'll be something. He was such a lovely looking horse. And so we went from there with his fairy tale story. And he, as a young horse, he wasn't the bravest. I did quite a lot of drag hunting with him and to try and sort of toughen him up. But we had this amazing partnership. And I remember the year before Beijing, Foxy, William Fox Pitt, one of my best friends, sort of said to me, well, why you surely got to have a bit of a chance with that horse. I said, don't be so ridiculous. Hasn't nearly got enough experience. It's only a 9-year-old or 8-year-old or something. And so I did Blenheim on him. And then I thought, actually, he's a blood horse. It takes nothing out of him. Race horses can run 2 weeks apart. And Blenheim and Buccleuch were a month apart or something similar. And I ran him at both. And he was second at one and third in another. And all of a sudden, I was in line to be able to go to Beijing, Hong Kong. And again, I was reserved. Hadn't quite done enough. I had people writing to me going, really, do you think this is the right decision? The heat is going to be unbearable. The horse is a long flight. You don't know how the humidity is going to cope with people. He's such a young horse. Why don't you wait for the next Olympics? And it was a really difficult one. I thought, no, if this horse, I'm going to absolutely seize this opportunity. He's a fit blood horse. I'm going to give it a go. He might be lacking a bit of experience, but, he's really not done much wrong in his career so far. And thank God I did, because his naivety and everything else, he absolutely shone and coped in that atmosphere. For a very insecure, sensitive horse, he coped with those lights and atmosphere unbelievably. And then to come away with that individual medal was, and I had also had 2 children as well, just before that. And Harry was actually a twin at the time, and I lost one of the twins, so I had a lot of mental strain just before that. So Harry was only 1.5 when I went there, and Isabel was 3. And there was I going to my first Olympic Games as a mum. Not as I imagined it to be at all, but it's just the way life works out sometimes. And I was lucky after having children that I was able to get on board again, and the horses like Minus Frolic, who have such a lovely temperament, and I had another horse called First Flight, who I used to ride for Polly and David Gilmore. He was a fantastic jumper, and I got on and thought, actually, yeah, I can do this. And, and that's not always the case for everybody that has children. And I totally respect people's decision that decide it's not for them, because it is very, very much a personal thing. And being careful about which horses you get back on after having children, because if you get on the wrong one and you lose your balance and you have a bit of a fright, it could put you off forever. And I was very lucky. I was one of the lucky ones that could get back and be competing at the very top level. I felt a bit blubbery and a bit wobbly, a bit fat compared to some of the other Olympic athletes walking around the Olympic Park. But I did a very quick crash course when it was looking like I was going to be getting in. When Zara's horse, Toy Town, went lame, I got in. And so it was like, crikey, this is really happening. You need to get fitter very, very quickly. So, oh my God, it's been the most amazing sport and career, really.
It's an amazing story. And even just getting to Hong Kong, Minus Frolic was still, as you've said, relatively young. You get that individual bronze medal. I mean, to have waited for that Olympic taste and then to come home with a medal around your neck after everything that you've achieved and gone through over the last few years is incredible. But actually, it almost, he stepped up at that occasion and he stayed up. The following year was the European Championships. It was a tough European Championships. And talk to us about that, because you then went on to become a European champion. So you've not only got an Olympic medal, but 2009 took the European title as well. And he really was proving to be that horse of a lifetime at this point.
Yeah. And, he was such a special horse because of his special temperament. And I he was beautiful, but he wasn't the most scopiest of horse. We, on that last day, on the second, because that was the first time we had 2 rounds of show jumping going back to the Olympics. It was 11 o'clock at night under lights. The second round, there was a reduced number of fences. I don't know, let's say there were 8 or 9 fences. And they looked flipping enormous. Honestly, Minus Frolic probably had the scope to jump maybe 140 if I saw the perfect stride and a flat-out gallop. The fences looked enormous, and he just tried his socks off. He, as I said, he wasn't a horse that had endless scope. He wasn't the most supple and athletic, but he had this most beautiful temperament that he absolutely wanted to do the right thing for me. And he, through his career, he was also a very sound horse. That helped, and I suppose I am a lover of the thoroughbred, but galloping for a thoroughbred is natural. And, I think that absolutely does help. It's that part, speed, in my mind, speed is the ones that can cause injuries in general. Obviously, I'm being very general about this, but, and for the thoroughbred horses, it's easy for them to gallop. So in my eyes, it puts less strain on them. So, he was also a very sound horse, which, again, for me, when we spend all these years producing these horses, 5 or 6 years from nothing to the top level, we at least want to have a few years, if we can, enjoying the the rewards of our hard work and really enjoy those top years. And I managed to have many top years with him. So to have the Olympics was amazing. And then, to go to Europeans and be actually, one of the fancied ones, which was an unusual position for me to be in. I felt I had an opportunity, but like always, I don't always put huge amounts of pressure on myself. I don't go there thinking, right, unless I win individual gold, I'm going to be disappointed, because I think personally, if you do put that pressure on yourself, the pressure might not always work in your favor, and you can be disappointed. I think, yes, I'm going there knowing I can be competitive, and if I can do my very best in all three phases, if that's good enough to win a medal, brilliant. And if it's not, so be it. You know what I mean? And you can't control what every other person in every other nation is doing. All you can do is control what your performance. And, in those situations, it is so easy to be distracted with everyone and everyone else that's going on around you, and that you can feel the pressure. And then when you change maybe your way of riding or what you do with the horse, or feel more pressure, then your horse feels it. It's an unusual situation for them to be in. And that year in particular, the cross country in Fontainebleau did cause, Pierre Michelet's courses are always very testing, did cause absolute havoc. And half the German team all fell. I think 5 out of 6 of them all fell, bar Mickey Young. It's about the last time I actually ever managed to beat Mickey. And so that's given me great pleasure.
Not many people have beaten him since, to be fair.
Exactly,
he's been tough.
Exactly.
He's been tough.
I might just remind him of that if I bump into him. And it was one of those things that, it went well for me. Everything went right for me, and others failed. And, he was absolutely, again, on his A game. And, that is incredibly special. And I'd love it to happen again, but who knows, that week it all went right for me.
And he went on from a Europeans victory then to go to the World Equestrian Games in Kentucky in 2010. But from there was the heartbreak, really, of actually nearly losing him the year before a home Olympic Games.
Yes, so, I was at badminton one year and this lump appeared. So that was 2 years before, the year before London. And a lump appeared on the side of his wither when we were at badminton. Now, to this day, we don't know whether it was saddle pressure, whether it was a bite or what it was. Anyway, he appeared with this massive, great big lump on the side of his wither that was so tender, I had to withdraw him. So that was just, everyone was mortified. The owners were mortified. I'd love to have gone to badminton on a horse that I could have won badminton as well as anything else. And then he was put on antibiotics. Nobody knew what this lump was. And then he had a reaction to antibiotics, because he was on antibiotics for a couple of weeks. And he then nearly died from the colitis. And, he was very, very ill horse. But I mean, that was, sort of 2 months in. And it was unbelievable that he was able to get through it. I mean, it was so bad that it got to one point that the vet said he's not had a good day, and he'd been in hospital for a long time and was getting weaker and weaker. And they said, look, if we ring you tonight, I'm afraid it will be, because we're going to have to let him go. Anyway, I never got that phone call. And he survived, but I mean, it was survival. And to then come back and come out the next year, I wasn't then qualified for London. And so I had to come out in 2012, and Ballindennis put on a really early event at the end of February. Because there were several other nations that needed qualification, people needed qualification. And so we went out there. My father also died in February of 2012. And the only amazing thing that happened in 2012 was to get to the Olympics, because, we had absolute heartache in losing my father in February, just before Ballindennis. And so it was a really, really tragic time. But I knew that Dad would want me to go through with it. So we went to Ballindennis, got my qualification, and then got to London. But it wasn't something that I ever thought was going to happen. And London in itself was truly magical to be a part of the support of the crowd, and to be in a team with Zara was very, very special for me, because rewinding back to when I was 20 and Zara was 10, I was one of the last Land Rover scholars for the sort of up and coming young riders of that day to train at Gatcombe with Captain Mark Phillips.
Okay.
And Zara was only 10 then. And Zara and Peter, I lived at Gatcombe. I lived away. I went away with a couple of horses and lived at Gatcombe for a year. And that was a big time for me to grow up. General Jock was a young horse then. Smithtown Lad, I didn't have a particularly good season. And to then go through the years of when Zara went on to be European champion and world champion, actually I didn't have horses good enough at those years. And then to actually be on a team with her in London was so special in itself, because, we stayed close since those days and get on incredibly well. And I was, just go back to being proud again. I get all emotional. I'm quite an emotional person anyway. It was that bubble to be representing your country there, and to not let the whole experience completely overwhelm you. The children obviously beginning to get a little bit older. They were sort of 6 and 8 possibly, or might be a bit older. To actually sort of realise what mummy does, and that actually it's quite cool, because people at school are talking about the Olympics and that's where she's going. And so they came up just for a day, because we were worried obviously that Greenwich was going to be so packed. And that's another part. Sorry, I'm sort of going off on a tangent now, but when I'm competing, I try and mentally separate myself that I am a competitor today, and that's what I'm doing, especially when the children were younger. Obviously they're teenagers now, so that's added excitement. But when they were sort of 10 and under, when they were a liability to themselves, and could end up anywhere, that if I as long as I knew where they were and that somebody responsible was looking after them, then I could concentrate on being the athlete. And so, and that was my separation. There was no way I could have done it if I had seen, if I wasn't secure. I mean, children don't do it at all. If I said sit in the lorry and don't move, I mean, that would just be ridiculous.
God, no. You'd go back and they'd have driven the lorry somewhere they shouldn't be.
Can you
100%.
imagine the handbrake off or disappeared off and been kidnapped or something awful? So, and that was like with London. They came up for a day on the train and then, went home again. A friend who actually looked after the children when they were younger, Claire, she brought them up, spent the day for them, then they took them home. We watched me on telly because, it was at a time when that they were young, but we just didn't know how London was going to cope with it. And I just had to focus absolutely on what I was there to do. And we got so blooming close to getting that gold. Even now, it was amazing to come home with silver. The gold would have been really amazing, but it was a great team, and going back to the teammates, being on a team with people that you trust, everyone knows that they are putting their absolute best in and looking for that team medal, and that is where it's really special. That you're not just going out to being selfish for your own thing. You are putting in your personal best, of course, because everybody needs to put in a personal best. But out of a team, it's not going to happen for everybody. But in the end, you need to have that mental security that everyone is there for the same goals and the same reasons, and then that usually brings out the best in everyone. If you see what I mean, that's how
absolutely. Absolutely.
And the best teams I've been on have been when that has been, the strength of the team and the team and the support team around us. I mean, look, I've also been lucky enough to be, I think they said, one of the only riders that have been supported by the lottery ever since the lottery came in. Because my good old teammates, Pippa and William, they didn't get off to such a great start in seniors as I did. Obviously, they then took over me and have been total superstars and legends. But I have been supported all the way through, and that has been amazing. And to have the support team around us that we have now is unbelievable. You know, to have doctors and physios and vets and nutritionists at, you know, there to ask any questions or advise. And if I and I've had a good few injuries. You know, I have fractured my neck, I've fractured my back, I've broken my wrist, I've got pins in my knee. You know, over the years, I've landed on my head, unfortunately, quite a few times, which is why my memory is quite so brilliant. But I've had absolutely A1 medical care to help me have the very best treatment and the very best aftercare to get back in the saddle again and representing my country. And, you know, I can't thank them enough, because it is such a weight on my shoulder. When I was younger, you had to sort of put on a smiley face and carry on, and all you did was think about your horses. At least now, as riders, which is, I'm sure, why we have the longevity that we do have, is because of the support, the team support that we do have and around us. And, you know, it's very reward. You know, it's a real security for us, to be honest.
It makes a huge difference, and the team aspect again coming to the fore. One of the things that has sort of followed you throughout your career is still your link with racing. You've talked a bit about your love of the thoroughbred. Your brother is still heavily involved in racing, and I know you help him and have that sort of hand in it as well. Am I right in saying that was the initial link into your relationship with Red Mills?
Yes, it was. I mean, I've always sort of, you know, I'm obviously busy with my eventing career, but when Dad was still training and when Nick was starting off, I would help a little bit, not a lot, but with the feeding, and that Red Mills came into Nick's yard, we just kept the feed really basic to a cube, and the horses ate it really well, and it was a really consistent feed. But that's at that point I was looking for a change, and I'd noticed how well it worked with Nick's horses. That's when I moved over to them, and that has to be 8-10 years ago now. And I like to keep things reasonably simple. My horses in general are all quite energetic, quite bright horses, and so I just try and keep things as simple as possible. So and it's been a feed that really works for me. They've supported me unbelievably, and my horses have enjoyed their feed, and it's worked really, really well.
It's certainly a great relationship, and I know, listeners, we will have more Red Mill shows coming up for you over the next few months as well. But in terms of the future, Tina, because you have achieved so much in your career, in terms of the future, I know your daughter Isabel is very keen. Harry is not keen, but Isabel is. Do you think that you can see her pursuing a career in the future in eventing?
Oh, it would be amazing. She's a little bit like a mini me at the moment. Like she hasn't done so well at school. She hasn't had GCSEs, this year now, which obviously have been cancelled. She loves the riding. She always has done. She wasn't the bravest of children to begin with, but I came across a fantastic pony called Parsley, and she just did everything on him and is riding with so much confidence. And so now it's the horses that I have in the yard. I'm looking at, will they be horses for her? And she loves riding. So this lockdown has been fantastic for her. She's in child's heaven, not having to go to school, and can ride horses all day. And so we didn't really have ponies to do the pony championships. She had a fantastic pony, but he wasn't going to be sound. I got him out of the hunting field. He was a very talented pony, but not the soundest of ponies. So we rather skipped that level. And would be lovely if she could aim for juniors at some point. She's got a homebred mare to ride that I've got, and a horse off a local dealer lady that she's producing. And look, she absolutely loves it. Yes, she has ability, but like for any one of us, we need, as in my career, work hard and hope that it's right for you and a bit of luck for you. So yeah, look, it would be amazing. I'm never going to put pressure on her because I know the ups and downs of the sport, but oh my goodness, yes, I think I might get a bit emotional. And she's got godparents there that will be supporting her. In fact, Pippa and William as well. So it would be amazing. But no pressure on her.
She won't be lacking a trainer. Would you be a good at watching her, or do you get nervous?
Well, so far, I do get asked this. So far, I've been quite good because I've always made sure that she has ridden ponies that are quite safe, and so that I believe if she hangs on, the ponies aren't going to do anything naughty or really silly. So, and I haven't made her do it. It's been her choice to do it. When Harry, my son, and I was trying to encourage him to get a bit more involved, and there were boys in the pony club, but he wasn't really wanting to do it. And a couple of times he fell off. And I did look at myself and go, really? Is this really, it's quite a dangerous sport, really, to be making your child do it if they don't really want to do it. So I backed off with him. But with Isabel, as in now, when she's out competing, she wants to go and do it. I've been making sure as a mother that she's ready for it. And so far, I've been okay.
So far, so good.
Of course I do. Of course I want it to go well, and I'm excited for her. But, she's really enthusiastic, really dedicated, and really wants to do it. So, when it comes down to it, I've got to sort of take a deep breath and let her go. But
watch this space.
You might see me somewhere looking pale, and I'll be like...
She's 14 now, so you never know. Badminton,
no, she's 15.
Oh, she's 15. Okay, so badminton sort of 2027, 26, 27, 28. You never know, Tina, you could both be there.
No joke. When I get to that level, I might not be quite so relaxed. So you might just say, I think you said you were all right about it. And I'll be like, okay, I was lying.
I was lying at the time. In terms of you for the future, obviously you've got a couple of really nice top level horses in Calvina, who's back this year, Billy the Red, who's won a team gold at the Europeans. The plan, I understand, is for badminton in the spring, all touching wood, crossing fingers, etc.
Yes, Billy the Red is a real team horse. He went as reserve to Rio. He flew out there, loved the trip to the beach, and then came home again. But he's carried on from there and been to 2 Europeans at the Worlds. He jumped clear around the world. He's flown to America. So he's proved himself as a horse that is very happy flying. He is a world-class horse. I didn't bring him out last autumn just through a very minor injury that I decided that I'm going to deal with this now. When Burley was cancelled, I thought, what, for him, when he has been to he's competed at the very top level, I'm actually not going to bring you out this autumn, deal with the little injury that he had, and actually bring him out this year. So rightly or wrongly, if I've made the right decision or not, only time will tell. But absolutely, he is going to be aimed with Calvino. So they're my 2 top horses for badminton. Elizabeth Murdoch has been a great support to me with both those horses, and she's had Billy the Red for probably 7 years now. And that's very much where, she would like him to go, and he needs to go well there because, some of the other competitors, that have gone well last autumn, I need to come out and shine. But the great news also is that if we're going to hopefully have a European Championships for eventing, we have a double whammy to aim for. So to me, that's really exciting. I'll be aiming for an Olympic Games, but I need a good result at badminton. So time will tell.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of your career and what is left that you would still really like to tick off, is there anything left that you think, do you know what, I would really love that to happen to me? Because you've achieved so much. Is there anything left for you to still kind of makes you go, oh, a 5-star win?
Yes, a 5-star win. I haven't won a badminton or a Burley. I've been well placed at both. I've had some amazing rides around both. It would be amazing, but I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I lost the horse that I really thought was De Novo News, was the horse that I bred, that unfortunately had travel sickness and died of pneumonia when he came back from Poland one year. I really felt that he would have been a badminton winner, but I lost him. Billy the Red is more than capable of winning a badminton, but equally there probably isn't going to be that many badmintons, left in him or me. I don't know. I'm 50 now. I still want to be doing the sport while I can be competitive, while I still have that goal of being good enough to get into a team, but I don't want to be competing at that top level just to be another competitor. And as soon, I don't know when that time will be, but as soon as I feel that I'm missing a beat, I'm not going to be quite good enough. I do have the responsibility of being a mum of 2 teenagers that, it's very expensive. I'm by myself. I've been divorced now for 6-7 years. I'm bringing them up myself. As they get older, they become more and more expensive. And, I need to be, I've given myself the opportunity of keeping, and I've had amazing owners that have kept these top horses with me. It's going to be very soon, because Isabel is getting keener and keener, that I am going to have to step down, because I'm going to have to be selling more horses that normally I would have probably have kept for myself. But to earn some money to actually run a team, to give Isabel every opportunity to have had amazing life experiences that I've had in the eventing world. So I don't know when that time will be, but I am naturally cutting down a bit now. Equally, I'm in the next breath, I am still going to take it year by year. So this year, I am still very much going out with Billy and Calvino to get into, an Olympic or a European team this year, and then reassess on an annual basis of where I am with what horsepower I've got, and where Isabel is. But I have to be realistic. It's not a cheap sport to be in, and that I need to be selling more horses now.
Well, I have faith, Tina, that this year is going to be a good one for you, and we are going to be rooting for you throughout. We absolutely will. Thank you so much for coming on this Red Mill special. It has been an absolute joy. I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours on end. But look, thank you so much. Good luck this year. We will be following your progress, as I'm sure all of our listeners will. And thank you for coming on the show.
That's a pleasure. I've been waffling on.
Honestly, we could just listen and listen and listen. Absolutely. Listeners, we hope you've enjoyed the first Red Mill special of 2021. We have got some really exciting shows in the pipeline for you, so do stay tuned. A big thank you to Red Mills for their continued support of the podcast this year, and watch this space. Lots to look forward to. Tina, a big thank you for being an excellent guest, and listeners, we will be back very soon. Thanks for listening. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Eventing Podcast Classics. Don't forget that the entire back catalogue of the show are available to go back and listen to for free on your chosen platform, or just go to equiratings.com/podcast and you can find the link to go and look back and peruse them at your leisure. There's over 500 previous podcasts, everything from interviews, event previews and reviews, you name it. It is all available for you to go back. So why not go and have a delve and see what you might listen to next? For now, though, that is all we've got time for. We'll be back very soon with more.